Hey guys, AlphaSeagull here. So Expedition 33 completely swept the Game Awards just as I expected them to, and not only that, but they flexed even harder by dressing in mime outfits and releasing their free DLC during their Game of the Year acceptance speech.
So I'm very happy to say that it's releasing now.
Finally, an excuse to play the game again. Now, I could make a whole video about my experience playing the new content, but we both know that's not why you're here. First, let's discuss the changes to my Immortal Verso build from back in May. It's finally been patched, kinda. There's been changes to both Breaking Death and Revive Paradox. Breaking Death now only affects the enemy that killed you instead of all enemies, so auto death can no longer trigger its effect. Luckily, we didn't actually need auto death enabled to begin with. It just makes the build start working faster, so we can just turn it off. The Breaking Death change does create a few issues when fighting multiple targets, but single bosses are still totally fine. Revive Paradox now seems to only work once per battle instead of every single time you revived. This is a massive issue since Revive Paradox is the entire way we guarantee the use of Angel's Eyes. This means in order to make sure we stay alive, we gotta go fast. Now that speed is a factor, let's tip this factor as much in our favor as humanly possible. I'm in New Game Plus 5. I do not feel like making a whole new playthrough just so I can fight easier, slower bosses. So if you're in an earlier video, then using this build should work even better than it does in this video. Our setup is mostly the same, but the main difference now is that instead of Shortcut, Revive Paradox, and Contorso, we're now using Cheater, as much speed as possible, and Simoso. Good news for people who haven't beaten base Simon yet, Simoso isn't actually necessary to make the build work, it just makes you do way more damage and be way harder to kill. The main idea with Contorso is that if we add more hits, we get more gradient charge. Now we're replacing those extra hits with an extra turn, not just giving us twice as many hits, but also twice as much of almost everything charging our gradient. This way, as long as you're faster than the boss, you can stay alive no matter what weapon we use, which means we no longer have to worry about lightning immunity. But what if the boss is faster than you? That's where Simoso comes in. Simoso's passive makes it so as long as you're rank A or higher, you can't die. And since you can only drop one rank per turn, this becomes its own source of immortality as long as you're faster than the boss, since you can just go back up to rank S when it's your turn again. Now, some of you may be wondering why I don't use the new Esquioso weapon instead, since that gives me the Oriole effect when I reach rank S. And the short answer is that aside from Esquioso being the same as Simoso or worse in literally every way possible, Simoso's version of immortality can stack with Angel's Eyes, making it so we can live even if the boss attacks twice in a row. As for Luminas, here's the bare minimum to get the build working. It needs this many Lumina points, assuming your fastest speed Pictos don't have any of these effects. But if you're lucky, you may be able to shave a few points off depending on which Pictos you use. Keep in mind that speed is the main factor here, so you want 99 agility and the fastest Pictos you have, as long as the effect doesn't do something to interfere with the build like powered attack or something. Before I show you the optimal setup, note that it won't be optimal for every boss since this version of the build has so many more options available. If you're too lazy to create a custom build specialized for each boss, this is just the same basic setup, but with more shots, more damage, all that good stuff. If you don't have enough Luminas, you can absolutely just use the minimal setup and put on as many damage boosters as you can afford. Once you have everything ready, simply free aim, attack, free aim, Angel's Eyes, and repeat whenever necessary. Keep in mind this is not always necessary depending on your turn order, current rank, and available gradient. Feel free to add in any of these skills when appropriate, but only if you know you can get away with it. Otherwise, you can just turn your brain off. Using different attacks won't increase your chances of success, but they will make the fight go faster. This updated build can easily handle the entire base game even without Simoso involved. And with Simoso, this can even handle Oskio, Chromatic Lampmaster, and probably Duolliste in an earlier playthrough. Just keep in mind you have to gradient parry Oskio's final attack, it's a guaranteed game over if you don't. Have fun being immortal again, go cheese to your heart's content. Now if you've been paying attention to the intro, those aren't the only DLC bosses I've cheesed. The new Verso build is good enough for every difficult boss in the entire game, even in New Game Plus 5, except for these 3. Duolliste, Clea Unleashed, and Simon the Divergent Star. I feel like these bosses were made specifically to mess with content creators, especially players who are either all skill or all strategy. Simon and Clea in particular are hard-coded to be impossible to do an all-hit run for, so I settled for as close as I could possibly get. 5 parries for Clea, which is just enough to do a single counter, and 1 single dodge for Simon. Duolliste can be all hit just fine, but I still had to make completely different strategies for each boss to counter each of their unique mechanics. Let's start with Duolliste. It starts as a 2-boss, 1 health bar fight similar to Painted Love. Unlike Painted Love, they don't have a break bar. Dang. They're also both very fast, so much that even with Simoso helping my revives, I can't keep up for long enough to make it work. Luckily you can always just one-tap them, who cares? Oh wait, there's a phase 2. It's now a single target, so this'll be super easy. Oh wait, he still doesn't have a break bar. Dang. At least I'm way faster than him. Never mind, he's guaranteed to move after every single move you do. This doesn't ignore Cheater, but it does account for Cheater, giving him 2 turns after your 2 turns. At first I was trying to juggle immortalities throughout the fight in order to stay alive, even going as far as using Light Holder to bring myself to rank S quickly enough to deal with situations where I only had 1 turn after a revive. This would have worked, but while recording I realized that Cheater was actually my downfall here. The only reason I needed both immortalities is because he was getting 2 turns in a row, and the only reason he got 2 turns is because I did. So turning off Cheater allowed me to focus entirely on reaching rank S once and staying there. Then I can use Follow-Up or Berserk Slash as my main damage sources and just buff myself with the gradient instead. With this altered strategy, Duolliste went down surprisingly fast. Clea's main gimmick is that she checks if you know how to parry. That's it. She starts with complete invulnerability and only uses it when you perform a counter. Next time she gets a turn, she refreshes the invulnerability and does it all over again. She also has so much damage resistance that it's basically impossible to one-shot her before she can move again, at least on New Game Plus 5. But nothing stopping me from stun-locking her the whole fight, which is a little boring but gets the job done. Now Simon, he's got a whole book of anti-cheese. At first I thought he ignored priority systems altogether and just moves again whenever he feels like it. Turns out he does respect normal turn order, it's just that he also has some priority systems of his own that outrank yours. When you start the battle, he's guaranteed to do a lightspeed attack before everything else happens. This even takes priority over first strike, but make no mistake, your first strike is still there and still takes effect right after. This initial attack combined with a proper unskippable 2-phase health bar can make him impossible to fully cheese through one-shots. Don't get me wrong, you can one-shot him, but you'll have to do it twice with at least 2 different characters, and still avoid at least his first attack. If any character dies, he gets a free turn, and this again takes priority over whatever you've got going on, even Cheater or Revive Paradox. This happens regardless of whether or not they resurrect or how they died, even from auto-death. So he's impossible to cheese via revival abuse. If you manage to break him, he's completely invulnerable until his next attack. Not next turn, next attack. This makes him functionally impossible to stunlock. In fact, it's usually worse for you if you break him because he's guaranteed to get an attack in before you're allowed to do any more damage. On top of stealing shields like his normal version does, his attacks also deal more damage every turn, making it unreasonable to tank his attacks for any extended period of time, assuming you were bold enough to try it at all, making him practically untankable. On top of this, in New Game Plus 5, he's just barely fast enough to outspeed Verso, even with max possible speed, greater rush, and greater slow, making it impossible to tank with Simoso indefinitely. It's doable in New Game according to a buddy of mine, but even so, he still had to dodge the initial light speed attack. And by the way, the last hit removes the expedition from canvas, cause you know, of course it does. Thank you, Sandfall. To recap all of Simon's nonsense, he's got anti-one-shot, anti-revive, anti-stunlock, anti-shields, anti-tank, anti-being hit at all, and at least in New Game Plus 5, anti-Simoso measures all in one kit. This one boss has countermeasures for every single cheese in the game. What could I possibly do? Should I give up? Should I make a whole new playthrough just to fight a weaker version of him? Did Sandfall finally score a win against me? Is Immortal Verso finally dead? The opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself, Sun Tzu. As part of the DLC, they added a bunch of shiny new damage luminas, leading to a bunch of new, way crazier one-shot builds. I don't need damage in the billions though, I just need enough to one-shot Simon, and I just need 2 characters to have it. The only ones I can set up fast enough are Mael's Burning Canvas and Verso's Strike Storm. That way in theory, all I need to do is survive the first lightspeed attack, but I don't want to have to parry all this. If only there was some random new Picto completely overlooked by the community that helped me do this. SOS Healing Tint. If you're below 50% HP, you use a healing tint. Pretty simple. Except this isn't limited per turn, it's only limited by how many tints you have. So in theory, you can tank as many hits as you have tints as long as you can survive the hit at full health. I've got 16. On top of this, there's Shielding Tint, which gives you 2 shields for every healing tint you use. And this includes the tints used automatically, which means you could tank up to 3 times your amount of tints, or double your tints if you got shield affinity. And since these shields appear during the attack, Saimoso can't steal them, he has to deal with them normally. Our first team is going to be Monoco and Mael in that order, which you can decide by adding them to the party in that order, while the second team is Verso, Ciel, and Lune. Lune's existence is totally irrelevant here, she just can't die. But Verso has to move before Ciel. Normally this is RNG when using First Strike, but you can combine Survivor, Auto Death, and Shortcut to force someone to move first since that takes priority. For the first team, Monoco will not only charge up a bunch of Gradient, but also stack Burn with the new weapon Bagatara. For his second turn, he gives Mael a couple shields for extra damage. Then Mael charges the last bit of Gradient, ideally we should have 100 burn by now, then uses the last chance and Burning Canvas to deliver the one-shot. I did a bunch of small optimizations to try to make sure her damage could be good enough, even having a specific amount of total shields so if his attack had the echo, I'd run out of tints by the time Mael moves for the low HP buff. But it turns out I didn't have to do all that because his second phase still triggers at a third of his health bar anyway. You might notice both Monoco and Mael have just enough health to survive a crit, but not so much that they can survive 2 normal hits. With all this together, the only RNG in the setup is rolling good on roulette. In phase 2, we start off with Verso doing some free aim, attack, do a bit more free aim to get us to S rank, then use Steel Strike. Ciel does some free aim, Fortune Fury, free aim again, intervention, and just like that, Simon's cooked. I never thought I'd see the day where this is the hardest flex in gaming. All the super bosses in the DLC have fallen on the hardest playthrough, and I've yet to learn a single moveset. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to see more like it. I have the full uncut Simon fight on my channel which you can check out here, and a compilation of all the super boss fights here. Before we end the video, I have a message to Sandfall if you're watching. This was hell. You gave me over a week of non-stop headaches. Do it again.